Hey everyone, welcome back to Chocolate and Spice Two Brown Women Talk. I'm Nidhi.
And I'm Neha. If you're new here, welcome. On this podcast, we're serving up honest, unfiltered conversations about culture, identity, careers, trauma, health journeys, relationships, mental wellness, and all the beautiful, complicated messiness that comes with finding our way in the world.
Today's episode is going to be a deeply emotional and meaningful one. We are talking about trauma and how it reshapes you, how you survive it, and what healing really looks like when the world around you changes forever.
And we are honored to welcome a very special guest today, Nicole. Nicole is not just someone we admire, but she's also one of Nidhi's dearest friends, and they've known each other for nearly a decade.
I absolutely love Nicole. She is one of my closest friends, and her story is incredibly powerful. When she was just 19, she survived a devastating car accident, an accident that tragically took the lives of three of her friends. That moment forever changed her life, and the journey since then has been filled with grief, reflection, and deep inner work.
We'll talk about survivor's guilt, resilience, therapy, healing practices, and how trauma lives in the body and mind, and how we learn to move forward, even when we never forget.
We invite you to join us for this honest, raw, and incredibly moving conversation. Nicole, welcome to Chocolate and Spice. Thank you so much for being with us today and for willing to share your story with such honesty and heart. We are deeply grateful. So, all right, let's get right into it. Can you take us back to the day and what do you remember before and after the accident?
Yes. Well, thank you both. I'm so honored to be here. And it's just wild to bring this back up. It's been 20 years. So at 19 years old, I was a sophomore in college, and me and my dear best friends, they were headed out of town to visit their family for just a little vacay. And I was the poor friend out of all of my friends. And so I was going to stay back and work my part-time job, but last minute I decided to go. So five of us piled in this car and headed down the freeway about 4 hours away. This was in Mississippi, South Mississippi. And it was funny, when trauma happens, your brain, like I remember every detail of the ride, right? Like we stopped at one point, middle of the road, to help a painter push his car that was stalled out of the road, and little things like that happened. But what I remember most is as we were driving right before the accident, everything slowed down. Okay. So basically we were on this I-10, if you know I-10, south goes along the south. We were driving in the center lane, five of us in the car. I was in the passenger seat. My best friend was driving, her twin brother, boyfriend, and our other best friend was in the back seat. And essentially what happened was a girl came out of nowhere, another vehicle, and caused an accident where we flipped 4 times and then hit the cement median, north, southbound, or east, westbound. We hit it head on. And we, in that moment, like I said, everything slowed down. And what I remember was just the guitar string slapping. I remember we were all screaming. I remember in that moment that my mom didn't know where I was because I didn't tell them I was leaving for the weekend. I didn't live by them, so I didn't tell them I was going out of town. And I realized we're dying. Like, this because at this velocity. And I immediately had these random thoughts. Like when I was 7 years old, the little boy that lived across the street from me, that sometimes I was like, whatever, too, not the nicest kid, right? I was this little rough and tough kid. And I thought about this girl who was not in my sorority, but always wanted to be my friend. And I was kind of rude to her. And it was all these random memories that started. People talk about your life flashes before your eyes. It really does. But the funny thing is, it's not always what you think, right? It wasn't necessarily the moments I thought, but these were what were flooding through my head. And as we hit that cement divider, my best friend threw her hand in front of me and I grabbed her arm and we crashed and I blacked out and went into this other realm. So for those that are listening, if you're not spiritual, absolutely okay. I personally believe we all have some level, we are spiritual beings. And if you do believe in that, there is, my experience to me proves that there is another realm, not just this physical earth. And it was very phenomenal what happened. That's for another episode, maybe. But, and then I woke back up and I'll spare the graphic details, but I was helped out of the car by someone. My best friend was not conscious. I was helped climbing out of the car. Maxim, the boyfriend, died on the scene. He was crushed by the car. As I climbed out of the car, I saw two other friends that were thrown out of the car. Everybody was stopped on the freeway. And one was clearly not okay. The other one was completely unconscious. And so at that point, at 19 years old, your brain, you're just in this level of shock. And forgive me for saying this, but to see a brain outside of the head immediately at 19 years old. This is what people go through in war. And I'm sorry how graphic that is, but it's a reality, right? And it's stuff that we don't talk about. And I think of veterans a lot, but it marked my brain. To this day, I'll be 40 years old. It has marked my brain. And there are images that have never left, right? And there's images that I'm desensitized to, and I can talk about that later, but it marks you. And so long story short, they took me and one of my friend Beth to one hospital, and they ended up taking my best friend Lindsay and her twin brother to another hospital because triaging that many, and then Maxim died on the scene. The girl who hit us was doing a drug deal from one state to the next, and she was high as a kite, came back. And ultimately, throughout the next couple of years, she ended up being, we went to trial, and she was locked up for 65 years for 8 counts of vehicular manslaughter. So that's what I remember in those moments. That alone was very traumatic, being in the hospital by myself with, we thought I lost my left eye. Police are asking for all the reports. Like, I'm a baby, I'm 19 years old, and I'm by myself in the hospital in a city that I don't live in. And my parents don't know where I am. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's what was happening in the moment. That's what I remember that day. Just honestly, a lot of shock. Your body just goes into complete shock and numb and shut down. And I was pretty banged up. I didn't have as many physical ailments as I did mental issues, but my face looked like a monster. I remember being discharged from the hospital and looking into the mirror. Funny story. I grew up Christian, and the pastor of the church happened to be in that town. So he came immediately as I was being discharged, and his face was in shock because I was very swollen. My face had been hit very hard. So at that moment, that hour at 7 p.m. on a Friday night, September 10th, 2004, changed me forever. Never going back.
Such a traumatic, I cannot even begin to imagine, like, hard to put into words, anything that I could even share. But I was wondering, like you mentioned, there was physical component to it, and obviously there is emotional and mental component to it. How did you process it? Because you probably looked at yourself in the mirror and you're seeing yourself looking obviously very traumatized with physical impact, but also your heart's hurting because you're wondering about your friends and you don't have your loved ones around. Like, how did you balance all of that? I cannot imagine. I would have screamed and cried my eye. I don't know what I would have done.
Yeah, I mean, no one knows until you're in that, right? And there's really nothing you can do. I think the biggest thing that I experienced, and anybody that's gone through a lot of trauma, is it sounds like a silly thing to say, but I didn't know who I was. Right? My whole world were these friends, and I didn't grow up the easiest. I had some challenges growing up. And so, your friends become your family. This is my world. And so in a moment, that's all ripped from you. And not just ripped from you for a week, but forever, right? They're gone forever. And you're never the same. I had frontal lobe damage to my brain, right? To this day, I struggle with certain memory things. My fiance would tell you, I just don't listen, but there's actually medical reasons for this. And so no one knows. I mean, no one should ever have to go through that, period. And so I think I just existed. I was just numb. My mom, I remember once they took me home, and I was like, I have to go back to the hospital because of the nature of how the deaths kind of happened one day after they were on ventilators and so forth. But I remember my mom, I was just in this dark room, and you're just numb. I'm just blank. I just can't, you've been through war. And so I would just sit in this dark room. I had a boyfriend at the time, and I was like, go away. I can't talk to you. And my mom just said, you're not laughing. You're not smiling. And I'm like, I can't. It's not even possible. And I may never be the same again. Right. So I know this is so heavy, and it doesn't sound, well, there's not hope here. There is. So I know we're going to get to that later, but it is horrific. War is horrific. Trauma, whether someone is raped, whether someone goes through something that you cannot control. That's what it is something has happened outside of your control and you're subject to it. So how do you go through life subject to something, but really you then have to make decisions to help yourself heal, right?
Yep. And I'm assuming there was a certain aspect of survivor's guilt. And how did that show up for you?
So, yes, I would say it's really, really interesting. Everybody goes through trauma differently, right? Like I think there's probably similarities to a lot of people. I mean, I think for me, I'll just say this. Initially, I was shocked. I was numb. I feel like I lost myself. I had night terrors every single night. So every night I was in the accident again and didn't realize that it wasn't real. So that, does a number to you. And then as far as processing grief and the guilt that came with it, the guilt, I mean, there's like very literal guilt of when I stood up, when I was in the car, the way the car crashed, my best friend was hanging over me. And I had guilt for many years. The way I had to stand up to get out the car, she kind of fell off of me. And so for many, many years, and I might tear up through this part, but I felt that maybe I injured her worse, right? The littlest things. Then the fact that I went into this other realm and woke back up. But, for anybody that believes there is this life on the other side, or that there's this greater ecstasy or heaven or whatever you may call it, I did experience that. And I was very angry that I lived, because it was like, well, they got to go selfishly. Like, why couldn't I go? And then why did they not live and I survived? Like my mom at all these funerals, my mom was like, I'm so glad you're alive, but I can't even for the other moms that lost their kids. Like, what? So I guess to answer your question, yeah, the guilt I lived with, and the biggest thing that I lived with for 20 years, maybe not 20, because I'm starting to get to the other side of some of this finally, was I felt pressure. Everybody would come up to me and say, oh, you survived that horrible accident. You must have a great purpose for your life, Nicole. God must want you to do something great if you survived that and no one else did. Well, can you imagine at a 19-year-old, like what kind of pressure that must put on someone? Like, I didn't choose to not die. I didn't choose to go through the accident. And now, because I didn't die, I'm supposed to go live a bigger purpose than if I'd never been through the accident in the first place. That's not fair. But I carried that for many years. In fact, to the point, and I won't go into this, but I worked as Nitty Nose in the nonprofit world. I worked overseas. I lived in Mozambique, Africa. I lived in Costa Rica for several years. I lived in Hawaii. And there was a point at which I felt like I had to go die in the dirt helping others, because I survived this. So my life had to mean more than just having a family and having a job. So the guilt that comes with it shows up in different ways. But guilt's not serving anybody. Like it never did anything for me. And it took me a lot of years, and I did get free from some of the guilt. And I think I've stayed clear.
Yeah. And you have spoken to us about the loneliness of trauma, right? It's one of the hardest part of trauma can be loneliness. Can you share how that showed up for you in the journey?
Yeah, of course. And talking to the listener who hears this, I mean, everybody has different trauma. And so those who maybe lose a baby, right, through birth, or go through something else. I mean, I want to just speak to any trauma, right? There's a level of loneliness that happens because you're the one going through it. And also, my arm wasn't severed, right? I physically seemed, other than my eye that didn't heal, like I was okay. The internal loneliness, because I am now left with these images in my brain, and I am left with the thoughts and going through every step of it, of the accident and what could have happened, what should have happened. You don't know how to express what's happening in you because you don't even know sometimes. You are experiencing emotion and energy that's also, can we just say, the emotion and energy is not you. It's not our identity. It is something that happens, right? Like a headache were to happen to you. You're not your headache. And so what's happening inside of you, it's there, but it's not you. And so you're the one experiencing, and everybody on the outside, they don't see it. They're not in you. Like even the other survivor, the twin brother, he was blacked out the whole time. So he doesn't have any images. We just had dinner recently, actually. And he's like, Nicole, I don't remember any of it. And so it's so lonely because you're just inside yourself and you're trying to just your nervous system's just trying to get to baseline. You're just trying to get to a point of being able to function and go to a dinner and smile at people and not be terrified in a car. And okay, I need to buy a grocery. Like, you're just trying to live Maslow's hierarchy of needs, just bare bones survival. And now you're totally overwhelmed with being stuck inside this darkness that you don't know how to climb out of. And so the loneliness factor, I will say, a lot of people, you know, it's a scary thing to talk about, but I did try to take my life. Like, there was a point at which I can't escape it when I'm sleeping and I can't escape it when I'm awake. And I don't know. I mean, this is 20 years ago. We've come a long way with mental health, even in 20 years. But like, yeah, I had a therapist, and what did they do? They put me on an antidepressant, which, hey, I believe in those. I do believe that they can be helpful. And it kind of numbed me out. And I do think, hear me say, I believe in medication, and I do believe anti-anxiety and antidepressants do work. I think there's more to it. And there was stuff inside that I needed help with that would have helped me not to go down the path of wanting to take my life, I think.
Mm-hmm. And there was a before Nicole and an after Nicole, right? Like you mentioned about the pressure to do something with your life just because of this accident, which seems like such a huge amount of pressure on somebody so young. So how did you like make sense of it? Like, obviously your life is for yourself. Most importantly, and first and foremost, it's for yourself. So how did you like make both of those expectations coexist, like living for yourself, but this expectation of others of living for this higher good?
Yeah. The truth is, Neha, and I think I just uncovered some of this recently with doing some work with my friends with Wisdom Pathways. But I think I wore a mask for a very long time. I think I've worn a mask for many years. And I think, you know, Nidhi and I worked together for quite a long time. And, you know, I think I was honestly trying to be the person I was before, which is this big joker, and I'm funny, and I think I am funny, but, you know, by nature. But there's this whole side that I just was like, I'm going to have to keep being that, because that's what people expect and know me. And that's, anytime you change, think about this. I lost people, the abandonment alone. So abandonment, right? From your parents, from a spouse, from whatever abandonment happens. Abandonment's abandonment. So even if my friends died and didn't choose to leave me, I was abandoned, right? I lost them. And so what happens is your brain and the pathways in your brain will start to teach you, even falsely, like how to protect yourself. And so I was so terrified to be abandoned. I was like, okay, I have to remain this vivacious, fun-loving, whatever Nicole. And sometimes I was dying inside, and I don't think I knew it. And I guess hopefully that answers your question. But I think by and large, there was this expectation, and my soon-to-be wife talks about it all the time. She's like, I'm very honored because I feel like I see the true you. And so I think to get through life, I adopted a secondary identity that wasn't me. And I think I'm just starting to now shed that. And it's okay that sometimes I'm not okay. It's okay that I have wounds. And guess what? It's okay if I share my wound. And I think one of the things that I wish back then that, you know, I did have very, very good friends and family and people that just let me be as messy or as great as I was. They were the safest people in my life. And that, I think, probably more than anything else, was the reason I'm still alive.
It's amazing. I mean, thank you for sharing. It's just so healing just to hear from you, because we all have our own little trauma, you know, that we sometimes inflate in our mind.
Right.
And listening to you and understanding, like, being true to ourselves is so important. I was wondering, like, what would you be able to describe how you're, like, I know it can be traumatizing to walk through the journey again, but how did you heal? Like, how did you reach this Nicole stage?
Still healing, right? We're always healing. I think, I can't say that I did it right for a long time, right? I do think, you know, I remember getting out of college, finally graduating college, I chose, instead of this, you know, very lucrative, corporate driven direction, I decided to move to Hawaii. I was like, I'm going to live. I had no money, and I moved to Hawaii, and I just remember basking in a hammock. And I have always and will always know the God source, the spirit source. And I'm not attached to any specific philosophy of thought or theology, but I do believe there is a spirit being that holds this realm together for us all, and we come from and we are, right? And I think having that was even beyond the friends and the support system, because they've always been with me. And so to lay in the hammock and to just be loved by God, by this spirit source, that is the truest form of comfort that we all desperately want. And that spirit source knows us beyond ourselves, right? I mean, as part of ourselves. And so I think through that, and then some very dear friends, like my friend groups changed, right? The people that I chose to be friends with looked very different. And I think, it took me a lot of years, and I didn't do well through it. I became an alcoholic, as Nidhi knows. Didn't even realize that I was. I had turned to just whatever it can be to help you just cope, to feel okay again. And I think for me, I didn't realize, because drinking is so socially acceptable, and I could function and be super successful and super, engaging still. Like, I was very functional. So I would drink, right? There were other things. I was a workaholic, as Nidhi also knows. And so, I say all that to say the healing did take a long time. And I think little by little, yes, the journaling, yes, the spending time with God's source, yes, spending time with people. One of the things that I did that really helped me heal, I think, compared to people who have kind of just shoved it all down, is I talked about it. I'm an external processor. And so even if sometimes it made other people uncomfortable, if I felt like they were open to it, I wanted to share every detail. In fact, for a very long time, I think the accident and what happened was part of my identity. I assumed that part of my identity. So unless I told you every ounce of what happened to me, I felt like you didn't know me. So I'd meet a stranger and I'm like, here, you want to hear about my life? And so looking back, I'm like, that's so silly, Nicole. But it was what I needed. And it was like, it's all I can see. So if you want to know me, you get to know this. So I think it was good. I think in hindsight, maybe you don't share with everybody the details to all your trauma, but I think it was powerful for me to verbally process for years. One of the biggest turning points in my life for healing was EMDR. So I reached out to a therapist, and I actually reached out to this therapist because I realized I was gay. And little did I know how much other would come out of it. And if you're familiar with EMDR, it's just a modality in therapy. It's eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. So it's basically taking very difficult, you're fully awake, but they're able to help you process a very harsh memory to the point where I can still remember the accident, but I'm desensitized to the pain. It, like, sometimes when you think back about something traumatic, you could go straight back into the pain. For me to experience walking through and processing this memory to the point where now it just doesn't affect me the same way, that's healing, right? If I had known, and I've been doing therapy for a lot of years, and I did get sober, and that if anybody's going through trauma, eliminate things that alter your mental state. As much as it feels like it's your friend, it will turn on you. And it destroyed relationships in my life. Luckily, they're second chances. So,
yeah, I have known the post-trauma, Nicole, right? I've known you for 10 years, and I have seen these changes in you, Nicole. Like, we have talked about it so many times. Like, when I met you 10 years back, we were working together, it was totally different to you than what I've known when we both are close to 40, right? Yeah. I mean, it is so much healing, and you have taken us along your journey. That's what I love about you. You've been so open about everything with me, about how you're healing, how you're processing, how you're coping up, and how you're not afraid to be vulnerable. That's the best thing about you. And that is what I appreciate so much. You've never hidden anything. You've talked about alcohol, how it has affected you. You've opened up about it. We have gone to some of your sober, you're 3 years sober now, right?
Over 3. Yeah. November makes 4 years. Yeah. You came to my first year sober version.
You made me sober. Thank you for that. I mean, because of her.
I didn't make you. You chose on your own.
Okay. All right. Yes. You inspired me. Let me put it that way. Because when we used to have the gatherings, alcohol was the star of the show. And then we stopped making alcohol the star of the show and started making us the star of the show. And I was like, oh, how will I even do this whole party thing without alcohol? And it turns out that tea is as wonderful as alcohol.
Even better. Well, and I will say this because this is there. I mean, addiction or any ways that you cope, whether it be food or, you know, maybe hooking up with people, or I mean, there's so many ways, and I think they all help, not truly help you, right? But my quotation hands here, it all seems to help lessen the pain, or it allows you a momentary break from the agony that you feel inside, right? And so I think what happens now, and I think one of the reasons, and I posted this on my Instagram, I said at my 6-month soberversary, I said, I didn't stop drinking. I didn't acknowledge I had a problem, and I didn't stop drinking prior because I didn't know there was another way. Like, you're just hurting. So you think whatever it takes to, like, you know, to just feel better. And so I think, yeah, what we would go that route, Nidhi, at our parties and drinking and everything. But now it's like, we get to sit and it's like, yeah, we get to talk about the uncomfortable things. And guess what? Like, it's way better.
Way better. It's so freeing. It's so much better. I love you, Nicole, for that. Introducing me to have fun without alcohol.
Right.
So that is, I'll always be grateful for that portion because that has changed my life. So
I'm sorry.
That's so brave as well, because you know, like, alcohol often makes you not talk about the things that you actually wanted to talk about because, you know, you're like, oh, you're party animal. But to sit and really go deep, that's how you connect deeper, at least in my opinion. Yeah. And it's also very brave because then you really open up. So I'm glad, like, you know, Nicole, you and Nidhi have such amazing relationship, and I'm kind of jealous now. I'm like, I need to be part of the group.
You are part of the group. Well, and I will say real quick about that. It's interesting because I think, your relationships do change, right? And that's where, now, luckily, I had a Nidhi. I mean, I'll never forget. I was at home one day and I was in a very bad place. I had just gotten sober. I had a horrible breakup that happened. Like, I was not in a good state. And Nidhi, here I get this package in the mail from Nidhi, and they're like a case of Poppy, or maybe it was Olipop. Was it Olipop? Is that the
Olipop? It is non-alcoholic.
A case of Olipop. And I was just like, she sees me. And she didn't just see me and say, good job, Nicole. She's like, I'm going to join this with you. And so when you find friends like Nidhi that are like, hey, we've had our hiccups, right, Nids? We've had moments of, I mean, you can't be friends with someone for 10 years and not have hurt feelings. But if you can find an honest friend that's like, hey, like, here's what I'm going through. And they just join you. Was it Mother Teresa that said something? Like, she says so many wonderful things, but one of the things that she talked about is sometimes all you can do is sit with someone and just listen. And I think I did lose friends. I did walk away from friendships because I'm like, yeah, my needs are changing. And so I do think part of the healing journey is you do find the people that are okay. I remember someone I was very, very close to. And I said, sometimes I just want you to know what happened to me. And she's like, I don't really want to know all of that. It's too heavy. And that's okay. And she told me where her boundaries were. But guess what? I needed friends that were okay to understanding my trauma. Maybe you don't need the details, but I would say anybody that's curious about really starting to process something that they've avoided because they just think they can't go there, find one or two good friends. And if you don't know them, we will find you friends because we're great at this. Right.
Amazing. And Ars, like, what would be your advice to somebody who's, you know, going through traumatic experiences currently in their lives? Like, are there places they could go? Like you just mentioned, find friends that you could talk to. Are there any other areas like organizations or anywhere else?
Yeah, I would say, and I'm glad you said that, Neha, because I think the most important thing that I would advise someone is not to isolate. Now, I'm an extrovert, and I understand that introverts need more internal time, but even for introverts to not isolate, it is hard to find really good friends sometimes, let's be honest, like, especially as you age, right? And so I do think having a really good therapist. And so, you know, I would definitely find a good therapist. That's also hard sometimes, right? To find someone that's really good to help you process. There is Wisdom Pathways, as I think I mentioned earlier. My dear friend, Jenny Fairbank, who I've known also for a decade, and her business partner, Stephen Ross, they have a phenomenal practice, I guess you could call it, where he is a intuitive soul medium, and she works as she's has her master's in more traditional therapy, but she decided to really focus on somatic energy healing and kind of going into deeper places. And I'll tell you, if I had known 20 years ago that they existed and what they could do, I would have gone straight there. So finding people like them to work through things, and they have a greater community to plug into. And it's a space that people are welcome to come broken. You're welcome to come messy. And I know there's places out there, if people like churches or there's different organizations, but yeah, I would say, and then the other piece is if you don't feel like you can find someone, I mean, there's no human being. I'm about to get married. And as much as I love my fiance, there's no human being on the planet that can bring the comfort that the spirit can bring. And so if you don't meditate, so meditation has reset my nervous system because my nervous system's been whacked. But through meditation every morning and through just different practices, being in nature, I'm a musician. So find something that you can do that actually does help you process. So like, I'm a musician. I play piano, I play guitar, I play a lot of banjo, clearly. For me, that was an outlet. I'm feeling all this stuff. I'm overwhelmed. But that was a way for me to get it out. And if you don't know how to play an instrument, right? If people don't know how to do that, then learn, because it also takes your full focus. Sometimes we live in our head, and that's a dangerous place.
Getting out of our heads, like some way to get out of our heads. Like sometimes you need to go deep and think deep and understand yourself, but sometimes you need to get out of your head.
Yes. And writing is, most of us write, right? And so writing is a huge thing, just processing out all your things, because sometimes once you get it out, you get a break.
It's amazing. And I love your banjo right behind you.
I know. It stays up there too long. I haven't been playing it.
Just a last question for you is, if you could talk to your 18-year-old self, what would you say to her today?
Wow. I would say, be kind to yourself. Be kind to yourself. Because carrying trauma, there comes shame. Here comes guilt. You're not healed fast enough. You're broken. You're fundamentally irreparable. And I just want to say that that is not true. And if I could go back and tell her, hey, A, you're going to be okay. B, you didn't do anything to cause this. And just keep living, truly, just every day. Like the fact, I mean, I am most proud of myself throughout all of this, that I didn't stop. I have watched other people in trauma become this massive victim, or become angry, or become whatever, isolate. And I would say the difference for me, it's been a messy journey. Clearly, I was in addiction, but like, keep going and don't lose hope, because there is, like, I am the happiest I've ever been in 20 years. I'm the happiest. And I didn't even think I would live to 40. And here I am. Right. And so I would just say, if I could tell that 19-year-old self, like this isn't going to be your forever, but you have to go through and find the help out there, because it's not. Last thing I'll say about that is I used to work with girls who had been trafficked for sex, right? So that's a horrible trauma. And one of them said, this man did this to me, and now I've got to fix myself. How is that fair? Well, guess what? It's not fair. And I told her, I said, it's not fair. You didn't choose for it to happen, but unfortunately, you are the one now with the keys to get the healing. And there's plenty of support out there that can. And also for those that are considering taking their life, I mean, as cliche as we think suicide hotlines are, call them, because you aren't the only one, right? There are people that you can process with.
It's amazing. It's amazing. Thank you for sharing. I mean, I can see, like, you are, you're an extroverted, bubbly person for real. And it must be so hard, because I'm an introvert, and I like internalize things. I think through, like, I think and overthink and like drive myself mad overthinking. And I've seen Nidhi, who's an extrovert, and like it must be so much harder, because your natural impulse is not to sit back alone in a dark room and think. Right. The natural impulse is to talk and let it out, like get your hang loose with everyone. And it's hard when you have to also process and meditate and be kinder to yourself. So I cannot imagine, like, it must be such a hard journey. But thank you for sharing. So much to learn from you, and so many great organizations and other folks that you mentioned about that, we will obviously mention in our blog post, as well as anywhere else that we can share. But thank you for spending time with us.
Of course. Thank you both. And there's a lot of good in life despite the tragedy, right? And I love your podcast and that you're always talking about all the real things that are, that are happening for us. So yeah, it's, we keep going. Trauma doesn't define us.
That's the most important thing.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, thank you, Nicole. And thank you for reminding us that healing is not linear. I think that is the biggest learning out of the whole everything that you shared. And even in the darkest moment, there is light to be found. So thank you for all the connections, every story that you shared, and your sharing your deep inner work. We'll make sure that it is heard and it makes sure it resonates with people. I bet it will. So.
And for anyone listening, we just want to say if you're holding something heavy, you're not alone. Your story matters, your pain matters, and your healing, however messy or unfinished it feels, is still valid.
If you found this conversation meaningful, please consider subscribing to Chocolate and Spice Two Brown Women Talk on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, or wherever you listen.
And you can also visit our website at chocolateandspicetalk.com for behind the scenes notes, blog reflections, and more about past and upcoming episodes. We love hearing from you. Seriously, send us your thoughts, your stories, and feedback. Email us at hello@chocolateandspicetalk.com or DM us on Instagram. Thank you for listening.
Thanks for listening. Be gentle with yourself. We will see you next week. Bye for now.